Well, it's Wednesday, February 18th. I'm Brittany Noble. Here's what's coming up on the breakdown today. An exciting moment turns to frustration. A Black girl in New Orleans learns about racism when she's thrown a doll with beads hanging around its neck. Her mother is calling for recourse. And a Black New York developer is on a mission to close the disparities in the housing market. He's teaching people to buy land, build homes, and communities. MelaMama Maternal Wellness is an organization that's aiming to help Black new mothers as they navigate postpartum. We'll share the type of resources being offered to women by the group as they take on their new role. The breakdown starts right now. Well, a federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to restore a slavery-related exhibit at the National Park site of former President George Washington's home in Philadelphia. The exhibits were removed back in January. Judge Cynthia Roof ruled that the removal of the exhibits at the Independence National Historical Park violated federal law and longstanding agreements requiring consent of the city and federal government. She also stated an agency cannot arbitrarily decide what is true based on its own whims or the whims of the new leadership. Trump's order, restoring truth and sanity to American history, called for public monuments to be uplifting, taking aim at displays that depict the U.S. as inherently racist, sexist, oppressive, and irredeemably flawed. Trump has complained that such exhibits foster a sense of national shame. And a mother is speaking out today after she says her 7-year-old daughter caught a black doll with a string of beads around her neck at the Crew of Tux parade in New Orleans. This incident happened on a Mardi Gras parade Saturday. The two riders from that float have been kicked out of the organization after the incident drew more condemnation from public officials and community activists. The child's mother, Shayna Lee, talks about how a fun moment turned upsetting for her family.
I was like, there is no way. Like, out of all things that somebody could have thrown off of a float, it was her innocence that was taken away because I had to expose her to, a darker side of racism and tell her why she wasn't allowed to play with it.
Well, the hanging black doll evokes racist imagery and has historically been intimidating to Black communities. City officials, including the New Orleans mayor, plan to meet with the Crew leadership to further discuss this issue. President Donald Trump is lashing out at Maryland Governor Wes Moore over what Trump says is a lagging response to a January pipe rupture. The rupture sent sewage flowing into the Potomac River, northwest of Washington. Trump took aim at Moore, even though a D.C.-based water authority and federal government have jurisdiction over the busted pipe, which is outside of Maryland's lines. Trump took to social media to say he cannot allow incompetent local leadership to turn the Potomac into a disaster zone. The environmental protection spokesperson says that the Trump administration has been broadly shrinking its responsibility on the repair and cleanup of what is said to be one of the largest sewage spills in American history. Moore is currently the only Black governor in the United States of America. Well, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is awarding a $1.75 million grant to the Xavier Ochsner College of Medicine. The investment is aimed to strengthen medical education all across the Gulf South. The grant comes as HBCUs remain critical to the nation's healthcare pipeline. An estimated 70% of all Black doctors and dentists in the United States are all educated at HBCUs. Speaking of HBCUs, streaming platform Tubi is spotlighting the next generation of Black filmmakers by releasing 20 new films, all created by HBCU students. This is part of a new partnership with the HBCU First Look Film Festival. The goal is to support young creators early in their careers by giving them global exposure and a rare opportunity to earn sustainable income from their work. Tubi's new streaming hub called HBCU First Look is expected to feature more than 100 films, all from HBCU-affiliated creators. The projects range from stories about student life to deeply personal experiences and broader cultural narratives spanning genres like documentaries, scripted series, plus much more. And Kevin Hart's tequila brand, Gran Caramino, is officially hitting a major milestone, generating more than $200 million in cumulative retail sales. Hart formed a strategic partnership with Juan Domingo Beckman, an 11th generation tequila maker and CEO of Proximo Spirits. Gran Caramino grew by 100% in volume in 2025 alone, reaching approximately $2 billion in weekly retail sales. Well, coming up on the breakdown, entering into motherhood is a beautiful journey, but sometimes we don't explore the challenging sides of giving life to a person. So coming up on the breakdown, an organization assisting new mothers in adjusting to their new roles as moms. Stay with us. And for more news, headlines, and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day, please visit the Black Star Network. It's your source for stories that matter to our community. We'll be right back. You're watching The Breakdown with Brittany Noble and the Black Star Network.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Violent white supremacy is, quote, the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland.
The greatest terrorist threat to the homeland is the homegrown violence stream, including
hate crime committed on behalf of some kind of white supremacist ideology.
They are coming after everything in Black America. MAGA and Donald Trump are specifically targeting Black America. They are going after the money. Attack Black Lives Matter. Attack critical race theory. Attack woke, DEI. MAGA wants to defund Black America. This is a perfect example of our hearts, of their desire
Thanks a lot.
to completely degrade and de-emphasize Black people.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burke. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Thank you.
In our Black and Missing segment, Georgia police are asking for your help to help them find Jordan Tuggle. The 13-year-old went missing on June 26, 2025, after leaving her home on Winston Way. Tuggle is 5'2" and 140 pounds. She's a medium complexion and has black hair, brown eyes. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are still unknown, but police say she was last seen wearing a pink shirt with black pants. If you know anything, please contact the Richmond County Sheriff's Office at 706-821-1020. Well, today we're taking a closer look at the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. In case you missed it last night on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland sat down with some of the people who knew Reverend Jackson best for an in-depth conversation about his impact, his leadership, and what his legacy means for Black America.
Jeff Johnson joins us right now. Jeff in Portland, and Jeff, just you've known Reverend for years. He was one thing he understood was media, and if you were in the media and you were Black, trust me, he had your number. Just share your thoughts and reflections on the past of this giant today.
One is so incredible being a Clevelander coming after a great Clevelander and Reverend Moss. How much I learned from him being young in that city, and I think that for me is what's interesting. I mean, I've heard several people talk about how Jesse showed up with young people. And I also remember a lot of young leaders feel like Jesse stood in the way. And I remember very clearly being the national youth director of the NAACP. And we were in Florida immediately following the election, where we were trying to make sense of what had happened in that state. and People for the American Way and the NAACP had sponsored an event, and Reverend was speaking, and I was backstage. You know, as a young person in those places you hadn't necessarily deserved to be in yet, but you were there. And it was myself, Ralph Neese, who was the head of People for the American Way, Kwesi Mfume, who at the time was president and CEO of the NAACP, and Reverend Jackson. And Mr. Mfume had introduced me to Reverend Jackson as his youth leader. And in the midst of that, Mr. Mfume had to walk away, and I started to say something to Rev, and he looks at me like, "Why are you talking to me?" and walks away. And so the second time I see him, I said, "Reverend Jackson, remember Kwesi Mfume introduced me and I started talking, and he literally, Roland, looked at me and was like, "I don't know why you keep thinking I'm supposed to talk to you." and so maybe a year later, the Youth and College Division had done some real work mobilizing some young people around several issues. And I saw Reverend Jackson, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to speak or not. And he actually put his hand on my shoulder as he was passing by me. And he was like, "I see that work y'all doing." And it was such a time, I think, as a young leader to recognize that the position and the title was never enough. And Rev came up at a time where you were risking your life, where you were risking your livelihood, where you had friends who had either been killed or were political prisoners. And he wanted us to be sure as young leaders that we didn't take for granted the positions that we had as young people, that in some cases we didn't have to put as much on the line as they had to. And I think what was most important for me is on the other end of that, he always gave me his time. And so it wasn't, you know, some of you talked about who do you call when you're in trouble. Rev was who I would call sometimes when I just wanted to think through something. I mean, people talk about his charisma and his ability to move and the fact that there was no room, that he was a stranger, but people don't always talk about the depth of his intellect. Even in these last years, man, there would be one day you talk to Rev and he wouldn't be there at all. And then you talk to him 2 days later, and it's the most brilliant political commentary anybody in the country is giving. And so he was such if he gave you space for counsel, man, you were always winning. I never got off a conversation with him, whether I agreed or not, without seeing something in a way that I never would have been able to see it had I not talked to Rev. And so I think one of the interesting things, you hear people talk about Rev saying that, you know, he really ran a marathon. But I think one of the interesting things is Rev was really the only primetime dude from his era that didn't get assassinated. And when you talk about what it means, like, Roland, you know this, our community talks grace well, but we don't give grace well. Mm-hmm. And when you are a primetime leader, he was the first real primetime leader we watched get old. And there was so much nuance to that about how we embraced him and didn't embrace him.
Yeah.
What we criticized him for.
Yeah.
And what we didn't know we should praise him for. And he never complained about it. He just wore it. Because I think he understood at the end of the day the responsibility that comes with the level of leadership that he had. And I think the last thing, bro, is that that dude was hilarious. And his sense of humor was incredible. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't know is that he did not like fancy restaurants. Like, you know, he would meet these CEOs and he would have people take him to the steakhouse and Thai and sushi. But you know, that Greenville, South Carolina was always in him. And
he wanted some soul food.
He was like, take me to that spot to get me to the hole in the wall spot. And he never lost his common touch, despite all of the unbelievable places. And I think one of the things that I regret more than anything else is that many of us did not come together the way I think we should have. There should be a Jesse Jackson Center for Electoral Politics. There should be an institution that carries in an intellectual way, in a pragmatic way, in a strategic way, this unbelievable political mind that is unlike, I think, any that we will ever see in our lifetime again.
I agree. Jeff Johnson, I appreciate it, Frat. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you, brother, always.
Melody Campbell, I know you have to go, but I do want you to speak to this here. Reverend Jackson comes out of, whether we want to be honest or not, a church, a paternalistic church system. I don't know of any other civil rights leader who put women in positions of power and gave them opportunities to lead.
And also get mentored by Reverend Willie Barrow.
Yeah.
Right? And the women he touched, Mignon Moore, Donna Brazile, and so many others. And so, he fought for, he would know about the civil rights, about human rights, but he also fought for women's rights, labor. Cleola Brown sent me a text from APRI, and somehow she couldn't get in the building, just so you know. She was trying to get here. Yeah, she was trying to get on. But, just the way he showed up to so many components of our movement, which we talked about tonight, but one that I'm glad you're bringing up is what he did when it came to showing up for women. Yep. And showing up for Black women and making sure that Black women's leadership was lifted up. So I will never forget those shoulders I know that I stand on in this role, in this movement. And so Reverend Jackson is someone that with Jeff Johnson, we can't let that legacy go. Because I know there were young people who I talked to today in my own office who just in being able to be a part of what was happening, because you say, let your life speak for you. On social media at 5 o'clock in the morning, as soon as I saw it, and I just picked up my phone and his legacy spoke that early in the morning. People were just responding and the kinds of messages that were put out there. Sometimes we don't get the love till you're gone.
Yep.
But
you never get it.
You never get it till you're gone. But the way our community and young people want to know, and they have to know the legacy of Reverend Jackson in order for us to get through the time we're in right now.
Yeah. Right.
And so that we know that we've been here before in so many ways. And so the legacy I think he leaves is us finding our people out of this. Right. And finding the new opportunities that you talked about, Greg, to make sure that we continue to find ways to be independent. Now, I'm not, we can talk about debate how we get to the independence. I'm, of course, I have a heart attack because we talk about independent voters. That's another debate. But really, we have to do that because without getting myself in trouble, because I'm nonpartisan, but particular, we have to find ways to leverage, and we have that roadmap that he left for us. And let's just get this done. We have to get our people through this. And thank you for the opportunity to lend my stories into this tapestry tonight.
Mel, we appreciate it. Omega Psi Phi, Reverend Jackson's fraternity, posted this on social media.
Spring 1960 Initiative Pi Psi chapter is a towering figure in the global struggle for justice. A former second vice Grand Basileus, his loyalty to the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated has remained constant across generations. From the lunch counters of Greenville to the halls of global diplomacy, Brother Jackson has marched, spoken, and negotiated with fearless conviction. He founded Operation Push in the Rainbow Coalition.
We have so much more coming up on The Breakdown, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Well, home ownership has long been one of the most powerful wealth building tools in America. But for Black families, access to that wealth has been systematically blocked for generations. According to the National League of Cities, the home ownership rate for Black Americans is still dramatically lower than it is for white Americans. 46% compared to 75%. And the roots of that gap go far beyond personal finances. A long history of redlining, predatory lending, and discriminatory housing policies created a housing system that still produces inequality to this day. But now there are people working to help Black communities fight back, not just by buying homes, but by buying land, building property, and creating income that can last for generations. Joining me right now in the breakdown is Charles Noonan, a New York City developer and licensed builder who is on a mission to teach Black families how to buy land and build homes that create income, strengthen communities, and secure brighter futures. Charles, thank you so much for joining us on the breakdown.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about this statistic. 46% of home ownership for Black Americans compared to 75% for white Americans. What does that tell you about where we are right now?
It tells us that we're way behind. We have to do any and everything that we can to acquire land as well as homes. The reason I focus on land is because we have to start at the ground level. Land is the easiest way to start your investment journey into owning homes. My focus is to teach people not only how to buy land, but how simple and easy it is to build houses. Today, if we leverage technology, I feel that we can actually start to close the wealth gap and close that gap through land ownership, building our own properties, and that will help change some of those statistics that we have that are just not in our favor.
How long have you been doing this work?
I've been teaching land development in the last 5 years. I've been in real estate for the last 20 years. The reason I decided to teach land and development is because I realized when I was a kid in New York City, African Americans don't own the vast majority of real estate in New York. However, we're heavily populated there. And I always used to notice that whenever construction sites, whenever people were building properties, whether they're building houses, buildings, whatever it is, they put up these big pieces of plywood and they would just completely block out everybody in the neighborhood from seeing what's going on and learning how to actually build. So I started to learn how to build myself, and I started to learn how easy it was. So whenever I build a house or any sort of structure, I don't put any boarding up around the construction site because I want people to actually see two things. One, how easy it is, and two, how fast it can be done. So those two things are important to me because I believe if our children, if the young, if they're able to see it and they're able to understand how fast it was able to be done, I think they could start to believe in their own minds that they can do it too.
That's good. The National League of Cities also found that Black renters face major disparities when it comes to assessing safe, affordable, and stable housing. How do we begin to change that trajectory?
Well, it starts with the education, right? It starts with the education. The reason that they're not affordable, there's two reasons. One, I'll say they're not affordable is because we're buying properties on the retail market through places like Redfin, Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia.com. Those are where we're buying properties for the vast majority of our home sales. Those are where the statistics come from and the recordings. The reality of it is, if we can teach people how inexpensive it is to build properties, when you build, you're only paying for labor and material. So I like to teach people how to build properties, right? So we teach how to buy the land and then how to build. If we learn how to build properties and how easy it is and simple it is to build, then I think the price that it would cost for us to get into the housing market from an ownership perspective would increase dramatically. We all know who's building these properties, right? But we're building them, but we're just not buying them. We're not owning them. We're building them for people that can afford. But I think we can really close the gap and change the narrative if we learn how to build properties ourselves. It's a very simple 10-step process. The other thing that stops us, and I'm really happy about this, is major corporations such as BlackRock were buying up all of the affordable housing markets in centralized, concentrated areas. So it's not and this is not the first time this has happened to us, it's not just by happenstance that we're not able to afford housing anymore. What's happened in several markets is that large corporations are going in and they're the ones that are buying all the affordable and available houses with the plan of locking us out and making certain markets just a renter's market. So just imagine, let's just say North Carolina, there's centralized locations, areas or neighborhoods in North Carolina where BlackRock was recently caught buying up all of the houses and just allowing renting only. So our children, once they graduate college or high school, they're ready to start their families and buy properties. They don't have any available next to us. They have to either go to the outskirts or they have to pay super inflated prices to these companies. There was an executive order signed January 26th that stopped Wall Street from buying residential properties. We all know who signed it, but I think it's one of the better things that took place in this year that stopped those major corporations from buying, because that was one of the things that was locking us out. That's one of the reasons why I really focus on land acquisition, because if we can just buy and hold the land, we can stop that from happening.
And tell us about this. In 2020, Black renter households were the most likely to be severely cost burdened, spending about more than 50% of their income on housing. As a result, Black renter households in particular were twice as likely as white renter households to be behind on housing payments and twice as likely to report being at risk of eviction. Tell us how your program helps overcome this systemic cycle.
Right. So that hurt me, because when I was younger, we did face eviction. And part of my mission is to just help people not only buy land and build houses, but when we do rent, we rent with a purpose. We centralize and focus on areas where we can build at reasonable cost, which allows us to charge reasonable rents in the areas that we are. So we have an affordable build model where we can build affordable homes based on the homes that are in the area. So we're not putting mansions or houses where people can't afford in certain areas. We're putting really good housing in areas where there's a need, and then we're making the prices affordable for people in the area. So even when we sell, we always sell according to what can be afforded by the AMI, average median income of the area. So that's one of the things we do when I teach people how to build, or when people kind of like join our community. There's a promise to not only make profit, but to do it in a purposeful manner where it actually helps and uplifts our community.
Charles, tell us this: how will owning land help us build better communities and better lives for ourselves and our families?
Well, for Black families in America, land is about power, protection, and permanence. Land acquisition actually it kind of brings us back to our origins in this country. In 1910, we owned, right, years after the Civil War, we owned 14 million acres of land. We understood that land brought freedom, right? We could self-sustain through the acquisition and ownership of land. We've lost those properties through heirs property, things like redlining, Jim Crow law, discriminatory lending practices is why we lost it. Owning land allows us to kind of like put our stake in the ground. It stops the bleeding of land ownerships. It stops the bleeding of dominance. And I like to centralize my focus on areas where we can kind of like own certain cities, so to speak. So for example, we buy a lot of land in Birmingham, Alabama. There's a lot of land being purchased in Georgia, certain areas in Michigan. We're starting to buy that land back and really put a stakehold so that we can carve out our piece of America as it's being rapidly bought up by corporations.
Charles, tell us how we can stay connected with you and take part in your programs.
Sure. So I have a community online. We call it the Land Bank University. It can be joined through just simply reaching out to me on Instagram at Charles J. Noonan. I also have an initiative that we're doing in September called Let's Build Birmingham. If anybody wanted to join that, you could simply just go to letsbuildbirmingham.com. I also have my book, Let's Build Birmingham, which is also known as the 14% rule. And I welcome individuals to join because this movement has grown rapidly and it's really taking on like a huge headwinds as we look to impact cities that we can call our own again.
Charles Noonan, thank you so much for joining us today on The Breakdown, teaching us about buying land and buying houses and how to create passive income. We appreciate you so much for your information today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, coming up on The Breakdown, an author shares her story of how she overcame a difficult time in her marriage by releasing the shame and guilt from her past and celebrating 40 years of marriage. Her story is next. Stay with us. You're watching The Breakdown. And do you know someone in our community who deserves the Noble Spotlight? We would love to know your thoughts. Please connect with us. We'll be right back. You're watching The Breakdown.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity. We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
What's happening? This is your man, Motown recording artist Kim. You are watching the Black Star Network.
Hold on, let me talk.
Hey, Courtney. Hey.
Andrea Ramsey, whose work is resonating with readers all across the country for its honesty, its heart, and its message of transformation. Her story just isn't about survival. It's about growth, purpose, and learning how to reclaim your voice when the world tries to silence it. And she's joining us today to talk about her journey, her writing, and the message that she hopes that people take away from her work. Andrea Ramsey, author of Married Over 40 Years, Overcoming Adultery, Infidelity, and Children from an Extramarital Affair, joins us right now on The Breakdown. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brittany.
Absolutely.
Honor.
Well, for people who are just meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what inspired you to tell your story now.
Oh, who am I? I am, first of all, I'm a mother of 5, proud mother of 5 children, a wife, a pastor. I'm a sister. I'm an aunt. I'm a mother to many others that I did not birth. And to answer that question, Brittany, why did I write the book? Basically, from the pains that I have felt in my life, the guilt, the shame, and the heartaches that I have endured, the traumas that I have felt, I was inspired by God to actually be able to share my journey on how I became to come out of the journey, how God helped me tremendously out of this journey, and to help other women out here that may have had similar situations as I have. So that's my biggest thing.
And your story is deeply personal. What was the hardest part about putting your truth on paper? And then tell us what about this felt the most freeing.
The hardest thing for me was to put my family back into a place where there was pain. I didn't want my family to feel, especially my husband, I didn't want them to feel anything that was hard, anything that has caused a lot of problems within the marriage, heartaches, even when it came to my children. Now, my children was another effect for me, because I looked at, as they were growing up, they seen a lot of things, or at least my older children seen a lot of things, but my younger 2 children didn't get to see as much as the older ones did. And it was just to the place that I didn't want to put my kids back through that. So in order for me to get over it, I had to go to each and every one of my children separately and to ask them, is this okay? Would you guys be okay for me to do this? Because this is really putting it's not even a bandage, but it's opening up a wound, and I just didn't want them to feel that wound.
What do you want readers to understand about healing when life doesn't go as planned?
Oh my goodness. The best thing that I could say is, when it comes to understanding healing and what you're looking for out of that. I believe, and I have to only go by my story, as much as I went through a lot of different feelings of shame, guilt, and just to the part where I was at a low point in my life. And then, looking at pastoring, hey, how could you? Well, it was based upon, when you're looking at what really prompted you to go through those things. And for my case, it was trauma from my childhood, and it was trauma from even as a teenage year. So in order for me to get through it, I had to really, truly trust in God. I mean, I had to get to a place that I had to realize that God is truly the source. God is the one that He says that He will never leave you nor forsake you. And at one point, I felt that He actually left me. But when it came to understanding, I had to get to a place, and it was hard for me to actually forgive. To forgive those who has done things to me, even in the past. It was so hard for me to do that. But then I wanted to be restored. I wanted to feel happy. I wanted to be able to not put on this facade face of looking like I'm doing good, but really I'm just drowning on the inside. So when it came to God and to free me, it's one scripture, He says, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. I really understand what freedom means now, because the moment I was able to shed all of those pains and all of the things that I went through, even in my marriage, and then had to come up and tell my husband of the things that happened even as a child, which I was afraid to do. It became to the part where God just showed me that, you know what, baby girl, I never left you. This is your time to let all these things out. This is your time to release this. And once you release it, you will truly have redemption and restoration. And that's where I am now. My past can't even hurt me anymore. It's where I feel at this moment, I am so happy that I could smile without feeling like, you know, it's a fake smile. It's a genuine smile. And my kids and my family can actually attest to that, you know what, I see my mom now, I see a whole new different person. But to encourage somebody in order to actually really come through all of this, you gotta trust God. You got to trust him all the way. You just can't just sit him on the shelf. And I think that's what I did in the beginning. I sat him on the shelf because I didn't think he was moving fast enough. But when he began to see me and I had to see him into the part, you know, I became that willing vessel. I was tired. And I said, Lord, I really, 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 truly need you. So if you are who you say you are, I need you to come and show me, relieve me, help me, rebuild me, restore my family, restore my marriage. And that's exactly what he did.
And Mrs. Ramsey, we want to hear a little bit more. If someone is watching right now, they feel stuck, like they've lost themselves, what is that first step that you believe they need to take?
That first step that I believe that you need to take is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, whether you feel like you did anything wrong or not. Forgive you, because forgiveness is a very thing that I look at as not a band-aid to cover up a sore. It's actually releasing that sore. So forgiveness is number one, and then the next step to that is I know without a shadow of a doubt is just saying, hey God, I trust you. I trust you. And then on top of that, find somebody out in your community. Even if you wanted to, you know, reach out to me, you know, you could reach out to me, and I'm here. I'm 100% behind the part where I want to help people. That's my passion. That's my goal. I want to help people.
And Ms. Ramsey, tell us how people can stay in contact with you and support you, buy your book.
Oh my goodness. You could contact me. First of all, you can go to www.thebodyofchristcc.org, which is our website. You can also DM me at Andrea Ramsey on my Facebook page. You can also go to my YouTube page, which is a Body of Christ Christian Center. And you can actually just come in. I'm here. You know, I'm just here. I'm excited though right now. I'm just so excited. I'm just excited to be here with you, Brittany, and to be able to share just a little bit of my story.
Well, everyone will have to read your book, Ms. Andrea Ramsey. Thank you so much for opening up with us and sharing your story here on The Breakdown.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for having me.
And thank you for being here. And we want to thank everyone at home for just supporting the Black Star Network. If you want to support us beyond the screen, there's an easy way to do that. Head to shopblackstarnetwork.com. That's where you can find official Black Star Network swag, hoodies and t-shirts, crew necks, and everyday essentials. It's a way to support the network and show pride in Black-owned media wherever you go. But it does not stop there. When you shop at shopblackstarnetwork.com, you're also supporting a growing collection of Black-owned businesses featured on the site. And that's where you can discover brands doing incredible work and keep your dollars circulating in our community. Well, that's going to do it for us today on The Breakdown. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Be sure to keep the conversation going online. You can find me there at The Noble Journalist. We always want to hear from you. Please feel free to send your questions, your story ideas. Just let us know what's happening in your community. And please don't forget, we'll be right back here on the Black Star Network tomorrow at noon Eastern for more news, more context, and more voices that matter. For special news on the demand content, you can visit our website 24 hours a day. That's blackstarnetwork.com. Check out everything that's happening across the Black Star Network. Brittany Noble, have a great day.